Hi Year 11, what I'm going to try and do today is work through another example of a Unit 2 practical. The one that I'm going to do today is a lasagne in which I'm going to make the ragu, the white sauce and the pasta, served with a bread and some salad with a balsamic dressing. What I've done is I've done my mise en place before this video. So in your exam you've got half an hour in which you are able to weigh out, peel, set up all your equipment and your ingredients. As part of your production plan, what you'll have done is you'll have written a list of your ingredients and the quantities and what equipment you need, so that it's easy for you to be able to do that. So what I've done is, to this side I've got all of my ingredients set up and weighed out as much as I can, and then to this side I've got all of the equipment that I need, and then I've got my pans etc on the hob ready. Obviously, what you also need to think about as part of your production plan is washing up as you go along. So the aim is for you to sort of have put in every 20 minutes that you're going to do some washing up and clearing down, etc. If you don't manage to get it all done within your practical, then there is time at the end of that for you to be able to do it as well. Okay, I am going to try and do it as quick as possible because I don't want you to be here looking for 3 hours, but obviously you have got 3 hours in which to be able to do your practical, so I'll get started. The first thing that I'm going to make is the bread dough. So when you're doing your planning for this, anything that needs chilling or resting, so like doughs, pastries, or if you're making anything that needs to set like a cheesecake, that would be the first thing that you would do. So I'm going to make the bread dough to start off with, so that that can be left to prove. I'm then going to do the pasta dough, so that can rest a little bit to be able to do that. Okay, so the first thing, like I said, is my bread dough. So I've already weighed out my bread dough ingredients, so I'm not making masses and masses. So I've got 125 grams of bread flour, and I'm going to put in a teaspoon of yeast and just a little bit of salt. Okay, so that's going to go in there. So I've got half a teaspoon of yeast, and I'm just using the fast action dried stuff. A little bit of salt can go in there, and then I'm going to be sticking it all together. Okay, so into here I need my oil and water. I'm going to make a sun-dried tomato bread, so I'm actually going to use the oil from the sun-dried tomatoes. So it's a tablespoon of oil and then some water that's going to go into it. So it's probably about 125 millilitres of water, but what you don't want to do is add it all in. You need to add it gradually to make sure that you don't end up with a sticky dough. So in terms of your production plan, when you're talking about sort of quality checks and special points, those will be the kind of things that you'll be putting in, gradually adding of your liquid and checking the consistency of the dough to make sure that it's not too sticky. So I'm just going to pop a little bit of warm water in, so that it can activate the yeast. I'm just checking that this is lukewarm, so it's not too hot, it's not going to denature the yeast. I'm going to gradually add this in to the mixture to get a nice dough that's going to hopefully form a nice bread. Alright, so just gradually adding this in. What I'm also going to do is add in a few herbs, so they're going to go in just to add in a little bit of extra flavour, and then once this has come together I'm going to knead in a few sun-dried tomatoes to make it this sun-dried tomato bread. Right, so herbs are going in, and then continue adding my warm liquid to bring it together. Obviously, if you want to do a garlic bread or something like that, you could do that if you wanted. I'm going to plait this one once we get to that stage, just to add in another skill and think just a slightly different way of presenting it. Right, so that hopefully is going to come together now in a dough that I'm able to knead. Okay, so that's, I'm going to move that out of the way now because I don't need that anymore. Again, keeping your area as tidy as you can, to make sure that we're as organised as we can be. I need a little bit of flour on my work area just to be able to start kneading this. So you're going to need to knead this for about 5 minutes until it's nice and smooth and springy. And then what we'll do is we will leave it to prove or rise So I'm going to start off kneading it, and then I will start to add in some of the sun-dried tomatoes just to get it to have that little bit of flavour in it. In fact, I'm just going to move that chopping board out of the way a little bit so that I can start kneading this a little bit easier on here. Right, so we want it to be smooth and springy, and the way that you check is if you just gently press the dough, it will spring back a little bit. Again, that would be something that you'd write as part of your special points in your contingencies, just so that you've got everything clearly on your time plan so that you know what you're looking for when you're doing this. So about 5 minutes worth of kneading, and then you can shape it. So we'll keep going. Right, at this stage, all I'm going to do is I'm just going to chop up a few sun-dried tomatoes, just so, in fact I'll do it this way, just so that we're able to put those in. I've got a couple of sun-dried tomatoes that I'll chop up and then just knead in. Again, everything that you do for this particular practical, you don't need to do in massive quantities. If you do too big a quantities, it's going to take you too long to actually do anything. You only need it so that you've got sort of one portion to be able to serve one person. All right, it doesn't need to be masses and masses. Right, so all I'm going to do now is I'm just going to start kneading some of these sun-dried tomatoes into the bread. All right, and then I can keep working that a little bit more so now. All right, so when that's a little bit soft, I'm just going to put it to one side to start to prove or rise. If your mixture does go a little bit sticky, then obviously you can add a little bit of flour into that, and again that would be something that you'd write as part of your production plan. So you've got to think about anything that could possibly go wrong with this. Right, so my dough is kneaded, nice and soft, nice and smooth and springy now. So all I'm going to do is I'm just going to put that in a warm place just to start rising a little bit. So you can pop it into a bowl, cover it over and put it to one side and leave it to start rising now. So just get my bowl to be able to do that. Right, so I'm just going to pop it in the same bowl that I had it in just to make sure that I've not got too much washing up to do, and then pop it out of the way just to start rising. Okay, so that's left in a nice warm place just to start rising a little bit now. Again, just keep your area as tidy as you possibly can do. The next thing that I'm going to be doing is I am going to be making the pasta for the lasagna. So I'm going to use the food processor that I've already got out for this. In terms of making a fresh pasta, as a rule it's sort of 100 grams of flour to 1 egg. If you want your pasta to be slightly richer, rather than just using a whole egg, what you can use is 2 egg yolks, and that's what I've done. So I've already separated my 2 egg yolks as part of my mise en place time. Again, just to save time a little bit, so trying to get as much done as I possibly can. So I've got my flour already weighed out, and then I've got my 2 egg yolks already sort of separated. So I'm just going to get the food processor set up so that I can add that in. Okay, so what I've got to do when I'm making the fresh pasta is basically I need this mixture to sort of come together into what will look like breadcrumbs. So I'm just going to tip the flour in, and then I'm going to pop my 2 egg yolks in and just whiz it until it comes into breadcrumbs. If it doesn't all stick together straight away, what you can do is you can either add a little bit of olive oil into it, or you can add some water into it, whichever. If you're adding olive oil into it, you tend to get a slightly smoother dough, but we'll have a look at how it comes together. hopefully, hang on, let me just get this to come back up. Going, there we go. So hopefully what you could see then was that this has started sort of to clump together, so it's starting to stick together. So all I'm going to do now is I'm going to empty it onto my side to be able to knead it. So I'm just going to move the bowl out of the way, the chopping board a little bit further up. And just empty this onto the side. Right, so it won't be totally together in a dough just yet. What you've got to do is you've got to knead it to fetch it together. Alright, so it will come out onto your side a little bit sort of bitty and a little bit crumbly, but that's okay. Alright, so I'll pop this to one side as well so that we've got that out of the way. And then we can have a go at starting to knead this together. So at this stage, you have to bring it together and start kneading it. Again, exactly the same as when you were making the bread. You've got to work it till it's nice and smooth. Okay, so again, like I said, if it's a little bit dry and it won't come together in a dough, add a little bit of water or add a little bit of olive oil into it and it'll come together. So we want it to be a nice smooth dough. So again, we need to do this for about 5 minutes or so. I might do it not for quite as long as that, just but in your time plan, pop that you're doing it for 5 minutes into there. So give this a good knead. And then we can wrap it up and we can pop it to rest in the fridge until we need it a little bit later on when we start rolling it out. I've not got a pasta machine at home to be able to feed it through, so I'm just going to do it with a rolling pin. In school, if you want to use the pasta machine so that you get really nice thin sheets, you can do, but because I'm doing it just for a lasagna, it'll be okay with me just rolling it out. Right, so let's have a little look at that. So that's coming together quite nicely. So I'm just going to pop that in the fridge until I need it a little bit later on now. So I'm just going to pop it into a food bag and into the fridge. Okay, so it doesn't dry out, that's all. Right, so that's the bread. Leave it left to prove, that is the pasta already made and left to rest a little bit. So now I need to move on to the making of the actual lasagna. So for this, I'm going to start off by making the tomato-based ragu sauce. When you're doing yours, what you need to make sure is that you leave your meat in the fridge up until this stage, because what you don't want to do is be leaving it out in a high-risk area. You've got to have thought about any hygiene and safety rules and regulations and be seen to be following those as part of your practical. Alright, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to prepare the vegetables first. So you can have already peeled things that you need. So in terms of what's going to go into this, I've got half a stick of celery, half a carrot, a couple of mushrooms, an onion and a bulb of garlic. I'm just going to give my chopping board and things a bit of a wipe down so that it's nice and clean, and so that I can move on to the next stage, because obviously I've been making dough on this, so I'm going to give that a wipe down first of all so that we can move on to this next little bit. Okay, so that'll do for the minute. So first thing that I'm going to prepare is going to be my onion, and I'm going to just give that a bit of a chop. So I'm slicing and dicing. When you are preparing any of your vegetables, make sure that you're demonstrating safe but also effective knife skills. So you want really nice small dices, or if you're cutting it into batons or julienne or anything like that, make sure that they are accurate. I want mine to be small pieces so that they cook quite quickly, so I want them all in small dices. So I'm slicing into batons first and then I'm dicing so that I get nice small pieces of celery and onion and mushroom and carrot, etc. So these are all going in. I'm going to sweat these off first and then add the mince in after that. So I've got half a carrot in there, so you don't need lots and lots of things. If you were doing a really big amount, then it'd take you forever to do your chopping and your cooking, etc., and you've not got time to do that if you are trying to be demonstrating 3 preparation skills, 3 methods of cooking, and you're thinking about your presentation, etc. So it's more important that you do all of those things than it is to make a big amount of something, because you don't need to. What I am doing is I'm trying to put in a few different vegetables, because that would help meet the brief that you've been given. So it says in your brief that you need to be making healthy and sort of balanced and nutritious dishes as part of the restaurant that you're catering for. So I've got all of my vegetables prepared now. That didn't take me very long. I'm just going to chop up my garlic to add into it. Again, in school we've got garlic crushers. I haven't got one at home, so I'm just going to be slicing and sort of mincing the garlic a little bit just to get it into nice small pieces. Again, try to keep your area as tidy as you can do, so after each bit of preparation try your best to sort of clear it down and chuck any bits in, the rubbish, etc. So I'm only going to use half a garlic because I'm only using a small amount of everything else. So I'm just chopping it into fine pieces to start off with, and then I'll mush it with the back of my knife. Alright, so just give it a bit of a mince and chop down so it's as small as I can get it to be, and then that can go in as well. Alright, so that can go to one side. I'll put all the rubbish out of the way, and then I can move on to the next bit. Right, so I'm just going to add a little bit of oil into my pan, just so that this can cook off. Turn the heat on, and then start to soften all of this. So at this stage, that's when I would be starting to get out my mince to be able to then put in here. So I wouldn't be getting it out of the fridge up until this time. So I'm just going to move my chopping board out of the way now. So again, I'm trying to keep my area as tidy as I can. And wipe this all down, and then I will keep an eye on the pan. So when you are cooking anything like this, what you need to make sure is that you are not leaving any pans that you've got unattended, because you need to have thought about all of your hygiene and safety again. So pan handles out to the side, all of those kind of things are really important. Right, so I'll get my spoon, and I'm looking for all of this just to soften. What I don't want is, I don't want anything to sort of colour particularly. I don't want it to go brown and caramelised. I just want it to start to soften a little bit. So I've got all of this starting to cook. Once it's softened, I'll then add in the mince. Once this is cooked, the next job is then to make the white sauce that's going to form sort of the top part of the lasagna. What we'll then do is I'll roll out the pasta sheets, and we'll assemble it all, because we'll have the ragu sorted, we'll have the white sauce sorted, we'll have the pasta sorted. That can then go into an already preheated oven, and I can be shaping the bread that can go into the oven as well. And then the final bit will be to prepare the salad and the dressing in preparation to be able to sort of serve it all together. Alright, so that's the sort of next stage of this process. But like I said, what you'd be doing is possibly be doing a little bit of washing up in between each of these different things, because you can give your pasta a little bit longer to rest, you can give your bread a little bit longer to prove, etc. Right, so this is starting to soften a little bit now. Right, so at this stage what we've got is, I'll just click on that again, the vegetables softening. So I'll just show you. They've softened and starting to sweat down a little bit, so I'll then add in the mince. Like I said, you'll have kept yours in the fridge until it is time for it to come out. And I only need around about 125 grams of mince. Again, you don't need loads of anything, because it's really important that you're not overcooking things, right? So I'll break that up now so that this can start to all cook down. I'm not going to add anything else after this until all my mince is totally sort of cooked. Again, because you're using a high-risk food, just make sure any of your packaging and those kind of things are out of the way and in the bin, so that there's no risk of cross-contamination. Alright, so we'll get that cooking now so that we get our mince nice and browned off. And while that was happening, like I said, you can just be clearing your side down and all of those things. So I'm just going to mush that all up so it's all broken up, and let that cook down a little bit. Don't leave any spoons or anything like that in your pans when you're doing this, because what you don't want to happen is for it to burn or anything like that. Okay, so actually while that's cooking, what I could be doing is I could also be rolling out my pasta if I was leaving that to simmer for a little bit and start to cook down. Right, but I'm just going to keep an eye on it while it's browning. A little bit. Again, another really important thing is your heat management. So making sure that you are aware of the kind of temperatures that it needs to be on, making sure things aren't burning and sticking, etc. Being able to control the heat of whatever it is that you're cooking is really important. Starting to brown a little bit. Once it's browned, what I'm then going to add in is the flavouring. So I'm going to add in some tomato puree, I'm going to add in an oxo cube, and then I'm going to add some pepper and some herbs, etc. I'm not going to add any salt in, and the reason I'm not adding any salt in is because there's already salt in the stock cube. But also, if we're thinking about healthy eating, actually we shouldn't be having too much salt in our diet. So adding extra salt into it is something that, you know, won't meet the needs of the brief that you've been set. Right, while that's cooking a little bit, I'm just going to have a quick look at my bread and just check that my pasta's not drying out. So I'll have a look to see if my bread's rising a little bit. Yeah, it is. That's looking good. And again, if you've got time, what you could do is you could give your bread sort of a double rise. So what I'm going to do in a minute is I'm going to knead it again, plait it, and then put it on the tray to rise again before I then put it into the oven. So hopefully that will give us a much better, lighter, more puffy bread. I'm not going to use all of the dough though, I'm going to divide that into two because we don't want too big a piece on the plate for presentation. Right, so this is starting to be nice and brown now. Again, just turn it up a little bit. Now it's softened a bit more. And then I'll show you what it looks like at that stage. Right, so all of the mince now has turned from that pinky colour to the brownie colour, so that means that I can then move on to the next stage. What I'm not doing is I'm not rushing through things, because you might want to use the timings that are at the bottom of the video for you to be able to put the timings onto your time plan, so you know exactly how long it is going to take you to do these things. Right, so I'll show you sort of this stage now, so you can see now we've got all ground mince and your vegetables in there, so I'm just going to add the flavourings in now. So I'm going to add in round about a tablespoon of tomato puree. That's going to go in. I'll add in my stock cube, so I've got a beef stock cube. If you were doing a vegetarian one, then obviously you'd use a vegetable stock cube if you were using corn, or if you were doing all vegetables, etc. You can't open it. That's going to go in. Right, I'll put some seasonings in, so I've got a little bit of fresh rosemary and some thyme, so I'll pop that in. A little bit of thyme can go in. And then a bit of black pepper. And then I'm just going to add a little bit of water in just to dilute the stock cube, but I don't want to put too much in, so it's literally 2 or 3 tablespoons just to dilute it slightly. And then I'm just going to let all that cook down, so I'm just going to mush it up, let it cook down. And again, at this stage, what you might be doing is putting into your production plan that you do a little bit of taste testing, just to see sort of seasoning, make sure that it's all sort of the flavours that you want it to be. Okay, so I'm just going to leave that on a low heat now while I do the next stage. So the next stage is going to be the white sauce. So I'm going to turn this down. Take the spoon out and leave it to start cooking, but before I do the white sauce, I said I was going to do sort of a second knead and prove of the bread dough. So I've got my bread dough out now. I'm going to give it another knead and just knock it back slightly, and then I'm going to plait it so that I've got a nice shape. So I'm going to divide it into 3 bits of dough to start off with, and then I am going to plait those. Alright, so for this, just rolling it into 3 sausage shapes that I'm going to plait. Okay, again, what you might need is a little bit of flour on your side. I don't want to do a too big a plait, like I said, because I want it to be in proportion with the single lasagne that I'm making. So that's my next bit. So I've got 3 sort of sausages that I'm going to plait. I've got those. I'm going to give them a quick plait. Alright, so I've rolled out my 3 sausages and I'm just plaiting them. I'm trying not to add any more flour, because what I don't want to do is make my bread too dry. Alright, so I've given that a bit of a plait, and I'm just going to pop it onto the tray and stick it back to start rising now. Alright, because I've got a spare bit of dough. In terms of my contingencies, I might make that into a little bread cake or into a baguette or something like that, so that I have got a spare bit of dough just in case anything does go wrong. So I'll just stick that on the tray as well, and then pop that again to be proving or rising. Okay, so that bit's done. Next job is going to be just keep an eye on this, make sure that it's cooking down nicely. and I'm going to then roll out my my pasta so that that's ready to put it all together. So I'm going to get my pasta back. I need a little bit of flour. I'm going to get my rolling pin, and then I'm going to roll this out into as thin as sheets as I can get it. I might not need to add any sort of flour on there, but we'll see how we go. Okay, if it starts to stick, then I will need to add some. And the aim is for me to roll this out as thinly as I possibly can. Okay, so it's going to be quite hard to do this because, like I said, I've not got a pasta machine, but I'll give it a good go. Just keep rolling, rolling, rolling. And I'm just rolling and turning so that I'm getting something that's an even sort of size, because I don't want to just have a sheet, because I've got a square container, but because it's fresh pasta it's going to be easy for me to be able to cut it into the shapes that I want. And I'm probably going to need sort of 2 sheets, so I need to roll it out, so I'm going to get 2 sheets. At the minute it's too thick though, so I need to keep on going. I want it to be as thin as I can. These sleeves are winding me up already. Right, so get in there with this again. It's getting much thinner now, so that's good. We want to be able to sort of see through it just about. Looking good now. Just a little bit more rolling. And then I can cut it into my sort of 2 pasta sheets that I need. Right, so that's about the right kind of sort of thickness that we're looking for. So it needs to be so that when you hold it up you can sort of see the light through it. I'm going to divide that into my 2 sheets now so that I can then focus on making the white sauce and then getting the lasagna all together. There we go. Just giving it a bit more of a roll out so it's as thin as it can be. Right, so next job, put it into the size that I want it. Right, so that's my sort of pasta dish. So I'm just going to cut around the outside of that so that I get a pasta sheet that is the size of the container that I want. And then I'm going to do the same again on this side. So I've got 2 sheets that are the size that I need them to be. Okay, so I've got that sorted. 2 fresh pasta sheets ready to use. And I've got a bit of spare if I need it. Okay, so next job is still keeping an eye on my ragu, but starting to make my white sauce or my roux-based sort of cheese sauce. So, in this pan here, I am going to put the ingredients that I need for my roux. So I've got 25 grams of flour and 25 grams of margarine, and I'm going to be using half a pint of milk for this. So into the pan, I'm going to put the flour and the margarine. I'm going to melt, but I'm just going to move the food processor out of the way. And just measure out my half a pint of milk that I need. There we go. So I'm just melting the margarine now. So I want to gently melt this, and I'm going to be stirring all of the time, because what I don't want to happen is to end up with a lumpy sauce. So I'm making this roux-based sauce, like we've made quite a few times before. It's melting margarine and margarine and flour till you get a paste, and then you're going to be gradually adding your milk into that so that you get a nice smooth sauce. Once we've added the milk in, I'll turn off the heat, I'll add in my cheese and other flavourings, and then actually we can start to assemble the majority of the lasagne, and that can go into the oven to start cooking. And then we can turn our attention to the glaze that we're going to use, or the balsamic dressing that we're going to use for our salad. So that's the next sort of stage. So I'm just giving this a good stir so that it can all melt and form this paste, and then I'll show you what it needs to look like at that stage. Oh, my margarine's not quite melted yet. Right, so my margarine's melted now, so you've got like just a paste, looks like that on end of your whisk. I'm going to be gradually adding the milk in now. What I don't want to do is add this all at once, because we want it to be a smooth sauce. So you add a bit, stir it until it's incorporated all of the liquid, add a bit more, etc. Alright, and you want to get a nice smooth mixture. Stirring continually so it comes back into a smooth sauce, and then add in the next bit of liquid. Same again. Again, in terms of contingencies, if this just goes too thick, then you probably start again, but it's about making sure you're gradually adding your liquid and you're whisking continually. So this is now nice and smooth, so I'm just going to add in the last little bit of milk, and then bring it to the boil, because that's when gelatinisation occurs, so it'll go nice and thick now at this stage. So we just want it to start boiling. So in terms of methods of cooking, for this we've used frying, simmering, boiling, baking. So we've got at least the 3 methods of cooking that need to be demonstrated, and we've got far more preparation methods. So we've chopped, we've made 2 different doughs, we've made a white sauce, we've been cooling, resting, etc. All of those things. I'm just going to click this on before it goes, and then I can't see what I'm doing. Here we go. So just get this to boil, and then take it off the heat and add the flavourings in. So that's thickened nicely now. I'm just going to take the whisk out of it, and I'm going to take it off the heat in a minute and pop in my cheese, etc. Alright, so it's bubbling, so I'm just going to turn it off. move it onto this front heat. At this stage, like I said, I'll put a little bit of black pepper in just to season it up a little bit. I'll put a little bit of nutmeg in as well. The reason I put nutmeg in is because it brings out the flavour of the cheese. So half a teaspoon of nutmeg goes in, and then some already pre-grated cheese. Alright, so that's part of my mise en place time. And then just going to stir that in until it's all melted in. And then I'm just going to add a little bit more cheese in and save a little bit for sprinkling on top when we assemble it all. Right, so that's my white sauce made, my ragu made, and also my pasta to be able to then put this all together. Alright, so I'm going to turn off the ragu as well now, because that is ready for me to start to assemble it. So I'm going to get the dish, I'm going to assemble it all in, and I'm going to start off with a little bit of the meat sauce going in the bottom. So this is going to go in first. So some of the meat sauce, and then we'll have a layer of pasta, meat sauce pasta, and then we'll put the white sauce on top of it. Because I have used some fresh herbs, what I'm trying to make sure is that I don't end up with a stalk in, because that wouldn't taste very nice, would it? So I've got my first layer of meat on there, and then I'm going to put my fresh pasta in, so that's going in, and then I'm going to put the next bit of meat in. Again, just moving the bit of rosemary out of the way and plopping this in. That can go in. And then that's going in. So we've got all of the meat in there, and then put my second sheet of pasta on, and then I'm going to put the white sauce on. Right, so I'm going to then pour my nice white sauce over the top of it. So I've got a nice layer that coats it and covers it all, and then I'll put a bit of extra cheese on top, and that can go into the oven as well. Right, so that's that done. And then a bit of the extra cheese, and that can go into the oven. If you have managed to spill anything on your dish, because this is going to be the dish that is going to be served in, just give it a wipe down before you put it into the oven, so that it doesn't end up with any sort of crispy bits in it. Okay, so I'm going to pop that in the oven now, just to start the cooking process. I'll clear this stuff. I'm going to have a look at my bread now, just to see whether it's risen and whether it's proven a little bit. Right, so we can see that that's starting to prove and rise a little bit. I'm just going to leave it a little bit longer while I make the dressing for the salad. So I'm going to do a balsamic dressing, and basically all it is 100 millilitres of balsamic vinegar and 2 spoonfuls of caster sugar that we just reduce down. Okay, so I'm just going to give me measuring jug a quick wash out, so that I've not got milk in it while I'm measuring out my balsamic. I'm going to pop these 2 pans out of the way for washing, and then get my pan that I'm going to do the balsamic dressing on here. So I want 100 millilitres of this, and then my 2 spoonfuls of sugar, and I want it just to bring it to the boil to start off with, and then reduce it down so we've got a much stickier mixture. Alright, so, oops, it's not stuck in, hang on. So that goes in. And then we'll cook that down until it's nice and sticky. So put it on a medium heat just to start off with, and just make sure that the sugar's all dissolved in there. Just give that a stir around, and then we can, once it gets to the boil, I'll turn it down and leave it to start cooking while I prepare the salad vegetables that I'm going to use to present on the plate. And so that now is all sort of incorporated, so hopefully it'll start to reduce a little bit. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to put the bread in as well, so that can start to cook. Bread's going in, and then I'm just going to fetch my vegetables that I've got for the salad over, so that I can start to look at how we can plate it all up. Alright, so I've got my slate that I'm going to put it onto. I've just got some pre-washed salad that I'm just going to pile quite high because I want a bit of height on this. Alright, so I'm making it quite a big sort of bit that I'm then going to put my other things on as well. Alright, so I've just got spring onion, some pepper and cucumber and tomato to be able to pop on. Alright, so I'm just going to cut these into some small pieces and add those to my salad stack as well. I'm going to cut this in half because I don't want too big a pieces. I just want it to be sort of scattered over it. So I've got some nice thin bits of onion that I'm going to pop over like that, and that's enough. I'm then going to get a few bits of cucumber. Again, I only want some small pieces, so again just going to be slicing and dicing a couple of pieces of cucumber that I can place on there, and then I can put my dressing over it when I'm ready to be able to do that bit. Right, so I'll pop them on, and then I'll do a bit of pepper and a little bit of tomato as well to be able to add a bit of colour into it. Alright, so again I just want some small pieces so that I can just sprinkle them over the top of it, and then I'll put my balsamic dressing over the salad as well. Alright, so that's going on there, and then a couple of tomatoes are going to go on, and then we can have a look at his lasagna and our bread and see how that's going. Right, so I'm just going to pop a few bits of tomato on, like that, just to add a bit of colour onto it, and then we'll add the dressing onto it after that. Okay, so we're starting to think about how we can present this now. Just keep an eye on my lasagna and my bread, that's cooking nicely, and then just have a little bit of a look at my dressing. So this now is boiling, which means that it's going to start this reduction process, so it's going to lose some volume in terms of the liquid, but it's going to thicken up a little bit so that I'm able to then drizzle it on. Alright, so that's sort of the next stage of this process. Again, at this stage what you'd be doing is you'd be cleaning down and making sure that you're ready to present it all for photographs and things. Alright? At this stage what I'm going to do, ladies and gentlemen, is I'm going to finish the video and then I'll attach the photograph of the finished item at the end of it, because it's going to be around about another 10 minutes for the lasagna to cook and for the bread to cook, and then for the dressing. Okay, so I'm going to leave it there and then put a photograph on of it all plated up.